your permission, Board Chair Scar?
Yes.
Thank you. So as you take a look at that data, I just want to remind you that really you have a number of pieces of information and data that you should be considering as you start your deliberations and think about how you decide you want to move forward. You certainly got this information, which includes a cumulative total of all of your responses to the interviews in terms of exceeds, meets, does not meet, in terms of your reflections on answering the questions. Certainly you've got the survey results from the community with over 600 folks who responded to that survey that help you think about the criteria that are important. You've got the candidate profile that you created and that you can think about as you're reflecting on the candidates. And then obviously you as elected board members have your own thoughts and ideas about who you think is a really good fit to help lead the Albert Lea School District as your next superintendent. As you start the deliberation and discussion process, remember what we talked about, and that is to really be thinking about talking about candidates' strengths. And as you talk about candidate strengths, be thinking about who you might want to move forward into a second round. And again, there's no right answer there. You have lots of options, and as we talked in our last meeting, you've got kind of that idea of three lights in front of you, the red light, the green light, and the yellow light. So with that, any questions before you start your deliberations? I think really the deliberations at this point ought to stay with you, yes.
In terms of favorable responses, the most M's and E's would fall to Mr. Boyce and Mr. Wagner. Any observations or suggestions or considerations any board members would like to present? I think that's what we're here for.
Michelle Mortensen, I thought there was a lot of negativity inside her answers. Almost all her answers had a negative flair to it, and that really bothered me.
Okay.
I think from a pure statistic standpoint, as you mentioned, Neil, the exceeds and meets expectations was two of the candidates very close, and then one down quite a ways. So I would agree with what you said when you looked at who's meeting what we and the stakeholders had mentioned were important to them, and who exceeds those expectations also.
Well, since the top two are within one point of each other, as far as the E's and M's, would it be logical to consider those two for a next round of interviews? Or does any one of you have problems with either of those? Or
are we looking at Ron and Brian?
Yeah, Ron and Brian. Or would anyone like to speak in favor of one or both of the other two?
Is
Yes.
it on now? The one who stood out the most to me was Brian. He really seemed kind of special in my opinion. I liked his background very much with special ed and mental health. And he just seemed like a very genuine person. I would be open to interviewing him and any of the other ones. Honestly, I liked Donita probably next, but we are asking some questions of her current status at Thief River Falls and have some questions about that. So I would be open to interviewing Brian versus any of the other candidates.
Yeah, I feel like Ron was very organized with his presentation. He did a lot of research. If you take a look at the first 100 days on our future workforce report, and just strategies that he has. A lot of what the fact that he met with the public before he met with us, he was strategic about that. I think he's a strong candidate for me, and I would be open to having him come back. I think his connection to the area makes him, and obviously how he interviewed makes him a strong candidate. I think for me, and this is my opinion, Ron was a stronger candidate, but both of them, I would be fine with looking at that. I think it's important, like Jeff indicated, this is just one of the measurements. We have the stakeholder surveys and the profile and how do they align with that. And so I think we should take all of that into consideration because we know people can interview really well and or not and might still be
Any other ideas?
Yes, I appreciated the information that Ron provides us. He does seem warm and approachable. I also appreciated Brian's experience with mental health, with special ed, with actually, I think in some of his materials he had said that their special ed referrals in one place he was were actually reduced because of preventative, or not preventative, but more proactive approaches to those situations. I liked his communication style. I've heard positive feedback about him already from his former positions. So I would support both of those candidates.
I would be good with those. I did like Ron's first 100 days and the amount of work he put into that. None of them totally blew me away. It's like there's options there. I think in the back of my mind, I'm just worried the amount of candidates we had to interview. From what we saw, they're good, but the short time frame worries me. But I'd be up for interviewing those two.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion that we don't want to rush into anything, but I don't think personally I would be hard pressed to find anybody that would blow me away as far as no matter who appears in front of us. I can't imagine somebody appearing for whom I had absolutely no concerns. It's a, it's a matter of degree, I guess. Nobody's perfect, but we want somebody that's close to that. And I don't want to. I don't want to be specific in some of the concerns I have about the two that we are about Michelle and Donita. I like all of them, but there are some things that about each of them that concern me. But it seems like we have a consensus, or a sort of a consensus, in favor of Mr. Wagner and Mr. Boyson. Somebody want to make that a motion? We have I believe.
I move to extend an offer for second round interviews for the Albert Lee Superintendency to the following candidates: Ron Wagner and Brian Boyson.
I'll second.
Been moved by Dave and seconded by Kim to request those two for a second interview. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? There it is. Passed. Okay. Where is he? What's next? I believe discuss reference. Yeah, all right. Yes, thank you. We have named the candidates who will continue, and we need to finalize second round interview questions, schedule, and procedures. Jeff, the ball is back in your court.
Sure, thank you. So, members of the school board, just quickly taking a look at the superintendent search timeline. Really, the next step in the process is the reference check part of that whole process. And Neil, that, as we've understood from our past discussions, is in your ballpark. So conducting those reference checks, and then as you get to the point of considering the candidates after your round 2 interviews, then you would provide a summary of what you learned during your reference check process to the other members of the board. So
you need to enlighten me a little bit. By reference checks, you mean the references that they have provided in their resumes, people who have recommended them?
Well, correct. And I think it's imperative that you talk to a member, at least a member of the school board or more,
sure, of
the current district they serve in.
But I don't need to contact the FBI or the
No.
CIA.
That will something like that will happen as a part of your process, but if you decide to make an offer, that offer of employment is contingent upon the successful completion of the further background check, and the negotiation of a suitable contract on your behalf.
Okay.
So that's step number 1. The interview process is scheduled. You have a schedule that's in your packet, beginning at 4 p.m. on Thursday, May 26th. Candidate 1 is at 4:05 p.m. Candidate 2 is at 5:20 p.m. There's a break. That's kind of the same process that we've just gone through. You again will have EMD forms for that portion of the interviews. You discuss information. You'll provide those reference check summaries, Neil, to the members of the board, and then you proceed as you determine, as you see fit. And if you determine, you have a motion just like you did to offer that employment contract to that next particular person. So the first question is, are we good to go on the interview schedule? We talked about that, questions?
Yep.
Okay. And then the second round interview.
Dennis?
Yeah.
So for this next time through, would it be smart maybe to switch the order and have, just to change it up so it doesn't feel like it's the exact same again?
Sure, so ask,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think just for listening, it might be a good to switch it up. And then make sure we switch which questions we ask. I don't think we want to be in
oh, I see.
the same order.
You want to, we have only two,
you'd be looking at Brian then at 4:05 and Ron at, yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean, put in the candidates.
Yeah, reverse the candidate
Got it.
order.
okay.
Sure. Sure, when I contact them, I'll certainly, unless there's some reason
Yeah.
that's in their
I was just
schedule that,
thinking if we're able to.
yeah, no, good point.
It's since I see we have the same number of questions.
But so it's not the same order.
You want me to arbitrarily,
Just redo it so it's not the same. Otherwise,
So I don't
it's
ask that
gonna
question at the
be,
end.
you're gonna go first, Angie's gonna go second, Bruce, just switch that order up.
I can do that.
I just got my 6 and 13 memorized.
Bruce wants the last one.
Yeah, you can ask the last one, Bruce.
Well, they're not exactly the same questions.
No, they're not, but I just, so they don't feel like, oh, no.
Okay, I got you. Well, I'll probably arrange them alphabetically according to your last names,
Except for you.
except for me. Well, it's probably still reasonably appropriate that I should have the first question. Not to be monotonous, but I will assign questions then.
And then, again, you've had those second round interview questions, an opportunity to look at those. Are we good to go there?
Yep, good.
Okay. So, really that remainder of the process is the reference checks, the round 2 interviews this Thursday, beginning at 4 p.m., calling the meeting to order. You've got 2 candidates interviewing at 4:05 and 5:20. The EMD results are tabulated in the same way.
Okay.
And then you continue your deliberations at that particular point in time. The other thing I'd mention then is we take a look back to the timeline. Then if you determine to offer an employment contract, the candidate accepts that, which I would generally believe is going to be the case. Then you start that process of negotiating the employment contract and conducting that background check. And I believe that you have requested that the School Board Association go to the more comprehensive background check, correct? That was something we determined in our planning meeting. So we want to have that happen, and if all of that works as we'd hope it would work, June 6th, you're meeting to improve an employment contract for the next superintendent of the Albert Lea Public Schools. Any questions for me? I'll need to step out and make contact with candidates, so.
Okay. Are we good to adjourn? We are adjourned.